Well, one would imagine that if Donald Trump could restart the war, he would only do so if he believed he could win. And if he believes he could win, then why isn't he waging the war right now? I mean, what was the purpose of the past few weeks? The bottom line is the United States stopped striking Iran because we were losing, because we couldn't win, because we don't have a strategy to go forward. That if we continue to go forward, the escalation ladder would lead to permanent harm to energy production facilities in the region, would continue to create devastation for American military forces and installations in the region that Donald Trump was losing. He had no other option. He had no other choice. So he stopped the the attacks, and Iran responded by stopping its missile attacks. That's where we're at. The United States has lost this war. It's just up to Donald Trump to recognize the defeat and figure out how to, find an off ramp from where he currently is. But if he could bomb Iran into submission, he would be bombing Iran into submission. And so the fact that he is saying things but isn't acting on them is just proof positive that he's in a very difficult political situation. He has to maintain the facade of being in control when the situation is totally out of control.
What do you make of the report of, 9,000 projectiles? That's what the U.S. officials are saying Iran has fired thus far. The United States claims, of course, especially during the beginning of the war, to have hit tens of thousands of targets. But what did you make of the last 13 days and the difference between the damage and the strikes, the precision, and all of this when it comes to why the United States is no longer firing?
First of all, we need to understand that the last 13 days, produced nothing except further defeat for the United States. Iran hasn't been hurt by any of the actions taken by the United States. We're blowing up, empty buildings. We're blowing up infrastructure that can be rapidly reconstituted. The United States intelligence community has, recognized how quickly Iran can get bridges rebuilt, infrastructure rebuilt. Every building we're striking, I was struck by the fact that the United States was bombing the Parchin missile factory. I'm like, why? Wasn't it destroyed the first time, the first 39 days? And if it wasn't destroyed, why not? But more importantly, do you honestly think that the Iranians kept anything of value in this facility? Don't we understand that every high value piece of equipment has long since been evacuated and put into underground facilities? And we're just blowing up, reinforced concrete. And the Iranians will come in and they will sweep away the debris and recast it. And once the war's over, bring the high value equipment back out, reinstall it, and get back to business instantaneously. We're doing no harm to Iran. We're killing thousands of people, tens of thousands of people. And that is, of course, harmful. It's criminal. But, our strategic objective was to collapse the Iranian regime. It's stronger today than it has ever been. Our strategic objectives was to, terminate Iran's ballistic missile capacity. It's all gone underground. They're not only firing missiles that, we claim to have destroyed, but they're building new missiles. So they're getting stronger even as they're firing missiles. Something that, we should, reflect on as the reality of our ammunition depletion hits home. We're running out of long-range strike weapons. We've run out of the interceptors needed to protect. You talked about an article where, they have to let projectiles through. You're in trouble when you have to preserve the Patriot missile interceptors to protect the Patriot missile launchers, and everything else gets destroyed. So, why are we there? Someday the history of this conflict will be written, and nothing about it is going to reflect well on the United States, whether the military or the political leadership. Iran is 100% in control. You mentioned Saudi Arabia. This is the reality that had Trump escalated the way he claimed he was going to escalate, it wouldn't just be Saudi Arabia that would be shutting down. It would be Kuwait. It would be Bahrain. It would be UAE. And if the conflict continued, it could be Azerbaijan shutting down. Iran has the capacity to shut down the totality of energy production in the Middle East region. And that would be the outcome if the United States sought to escalate, because there is no defense against Iran's ballistic missile and drone force. There just simply is no defense. You can shoot one or two down, but when we did our strategic bombing campaign over Germany, in the end, we'd launch waves of bombers, and the Germans would shoot down a few, send fighters up, shoot down a few. But at the end of the day, we were bombing at will. Yes, we took casualties, but the goals and objectives of the strategic bombing campaign were being met. The Iranians are firing missiles. Some are shot down, not many, and the ones that aren't shot down hit the targets that they're aimed at. The objectives of the Iranian strategic air campaign are being fulfilled. The objectives of the American strategic campaign are not being fulfilled. We're having zero impact on Iran's ability to sustain this conflict.
Yeah, and here are the satellite imagery of what Yemen has done to the strategic Yanbu port area. Oil infrastructure has been hit, the bulk plants in the industrial city. And it's, as you said, Scott, Iran could do far more damage than this. And the Gulf countries have been perhaps at the front.
Can I just make a point, since you put those photographs up?
Yeah.
I know maybe later we'll talk about Ukraine and Russia, but I just want people to look at these photographs. And also there's video of the big explosion when the Ansarallah missiles hit. Compare and contrast with the imagery you see out of Russia when a Russian oil refinery is hit. Okay, understand when I say that the Ukrainians make things go pop and the Russians make things go boom. This is what boom looks like. Okay, look at those photographs. That's what boom looks like. Russia has nothing like this happening to it. Nothing like this happening to it at all. There's nothing going boom in Russia. It goes pop. It burns for a little while. The valves are turned, shutting off supply. The fire's put out. The items are repaired. A week and a half later, it's back in duty. This will never be brought back into operation. This is destroyed permanently. It will take years to rebuild this. So I just wanted to bring up the point. When this is what happens when things go boom in oil refining and in oil processing, the energy processing plants, and it's a far cry from what the media has been hyping up about what's happening to Russia. I just thought it would be, since you brought out that photograph, it was time to make that point.
Wow, it's a really good point. Really, because if the satellite imagery existed on targets of these Ukrainian drone strikes, they would be out, no doubt about it. I want, Scott, now that you mentioned Ukraine, it's so interesting that it seems like Ukraine has gotten itself now entangled in the war in Iran. Here's Ukrainian Telegram channels, the monitoring channels, incredibly panicked after Ukraine struck Iranian vessels in the Caspian Sea. I wanted your comment on this development. Some people are saying that Iran could technically strike Ukraine from Tabriz in its, I think it's northwestern border, and get into Kiev. But I'm curious on what you thought about this situation. Why would Ukraine get involved? Why would it strike Iran at this point in the Caspian? Your thoughts on this?
Well, Zelensky ordered a 40-day war using long-range and intermediate-range Ukraine strike capacity against Russia. It's a 40-day drone. He ordered it to begin on June 25th. And the purpose of this was to break the will of the Russian people, to bring the war home to Russia, and to bring real harm to Russian capacity. But the most important part was to break the will of the Russian people, to make it clear that there was nowhere in Russia that was safe for Russia. And so, Ukraine had long argued that it had shut down the Black Sea to Russia. We can talk more about that later, as Russia basically shut down the Black Sea to Ukraine now. And they were attempting to make the same point in the Caspian Sea, where Russia had built up a supply line to Iran through the Caspian Sea. And basically, the goal was to send a message to Russia. I don't know if the Ukrainians deliberately targeted an Iranian ship. Part of me says they didn't. Part of me says they thought it was a Russian ship, and were surprised when they heard, but then sought to spin it. One of the things the Ukrainians are very good is spinning data in a way that's supportive of thematics and narratives. And right now you had Zelensky going to Washington, D.C. to meet with Donald Trump to try and get Donald Trump to agree to, provide additional support, political, military, fiscal, to Ukraine. And right now, Donald Trump is in a bind. We just spoke about it with Iran, getting his butt kicked. And so I think when the Ukrainians found out that they hit an Iranian ship, rather than doing the right thing, which would be to apologize to Iran, say this was a mistake, an accident, we're sorry, won't happen again. We'll talk with you about how to avoid repeating this. They just took the cheap way out. Hey, yeah, hell yeah, we hit them. Hey, Donnie, baby, see, we're in it with you. We're hitting the Iranians because we're on the same side. We're the same thing, brother. And now they're going to pay the price, perhaps. Again, I don't know what the strategic thinking is in Iran. Arakchi and the IRGC has made some very stringent statements, but the fact is, to strike Ukraine, the missiles are going to have to fly over NATO airspace. Turkish fly over Turkey, and I don't know if that's really the kind of escalation that Ukraine wants at this time. But they have every right under self-defense to retaliate. But whether or not they will, I don't know. This hype you see on Ukrainian social media may just be a scare tactic to again try and create the impression that Ukraine and the United States are the same, both sides being threatened by Iranian missiles. We're all on the same team, Donnie. Give us all the help we need. Give us the ability to shoot down those Iranian missiles. Things like, who knows what's going on with Ukraine? It's not a rational state. It's not functioning in a rational fashion. Everything they do is irrational. So who knows what their thinking is? And Iran is on the opposite. They are a rational state. And so you have to say, yes, it was an affront to have a ship struck. Yes, it was an affront to lose a sailor. But, the consequences of firing a missile salvo into Ukraine could be dire. So therefore, why do it?
And I'll just pull up what Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi did say. These are his words right after the incident happened this weekend. He said, Zelensky attacked an Iranian commercial vessel, killing a sailor, blatant violation of the UN Charter, done at Israel's behest to drag Europe into its war. In a call with High Representative Kaya Kallas, and Foreign Minister of Russia Lavrov made it clear that what the freeloader in Kiev did cannot go unanswered. So obviously no love lost, Scott, for Zelensky. Those are very strong words, but yeah, part of it, there was a target list released or target bank released, and part of it seems like what Iran's thinking is that maybe if war continues directly on Iran, Europe could very much be made part of this war. And Europe does have assets, does have trade, does have energy needs coming out of West Asia, especially after the UK, not technically part of Europe, I guess, but also with its activity, letting the United States use its facilities to launch operations against Iran. So your thoughts on this? Could Europe be very well a target in the next round of war?
Why? I'm still trying to figure out, why would Iran want to involve Europe? What is the purpose? The goal should be kicking the United States out of West Asia. In order to do that, you're better off having the totality of your military capacity able to be dedicated to that task. Why would Iran strike Europe? Because Israel let the United States use some bases? Then why isn't Iran striking Israel? Because the last time I checked, the Israeli bases were just full of American military aircraft, refueling aircraft. They're being used. So we know that that's not a red line for Iran. Europe has zero military capacity deployed to the region right now that's impacting this conflict. Why provoke them so that they do deploy potentially meaningful military capacity? For what purpose? To defeat Europe? Europe's already defeated. They're defeating themselves. It's the same argument with the Russians. Don't touch Europe. When the enemy's doing what you want them to do, let them do it. And right now, Europe is just dying, devolving, collapsing. It's become a self-parody. Look at Macron. Marine Le Pen is going to oust him in the elections next April, and she's going to be wearing a monitoring bracelet on her ankle. That's the state of French politics. Keir Starmer's out. This new Andy Burnham's in. How long is he going to last? Not long, because changing the nameplate doesn't, change the reality. It's addressing the symptom. The symptom was that people hated Keir Starmer, so they got rid of Keir Starmer. Now they put Andy in. They didn't change. They didn't cure the disease. The disease is the United Kingdom, which is basically cancerous and dying. And putting Burnham's name on the top doesn't cure the disease. They'll continue to treat the symptom, saying, well, he hasn't cured it. Let's get somebody else in. But they're not addressing the fundamental underlying issue, which is the dysfunction of the United Kingdom as a collective. Why would you want to do something that could potentially rally the United Kingdom, have the people forget about their political differences and come together and say, we must now be focused on Iran, who has attacked us? Germany, Merz is a joke. AfD, Alternative for Deutschland, is the most popular political party in Germany right now. And as things continue to devolve for the other parties, it'll become even stronger. They're not looking for a war with Iran. So why would Iran bring a war to them? Maybe the best thing for Iran to do is to do absolutely nothing, because Europe's killing itself. It's the same strategy for Russia. Don't do anything. Just let Europe be Europe, which is Europe's own worst enemy. So I don't see this war expanding into Europe. I don't see the Iranians doing anything that would, disrupt Europe's, path to self-destruction.
Yeah, well, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, Europe is not sovereign, so in many ways, if Europe entered the war against Iran in the next round, the United States would likely be behind them, pushing them. And what really could they do? I mean, what happened with Ukraine and the Caspian Sea? It's a very cheap shot. It's insulting. It would make sense if Iran retaliated, but at the same time, as you said, I believe this is true. What gain does Iran actually get from that, other than having to maybe waste some firepower on on a country that really can't do much to Iran? But some have made the assertion that this could be part of the blockade strategy by the United States to try to cut off Iran from the Caspian Sea. Do you think this is possible? Because, of course, the blockade on Iran remains. And this, as Iran said, is still war in many respects.
Well, the blockade never really did anything more than harass Iran. The last blockade, last time I was in play, didn't work. Ships got through. They didn't shut down the Iranian-Pakistani border, which basically looks like the Baja during those Baja races with the tire tracks. All the trucks going that way with oil, all the empty trucks coming this way to get loaded up. They're not stopping Iran. Our good friend Professor Morandi, made a very valid point that the vast majority of Iran's oil production is consumed domestically. And so you're not shutting down the Iranian industry through this blockade. You are creating, some potential cash flow problems. But hey, that's why they sold 60 to 80 million barrels of oil this last time to generate that cash flow. They've still got tankers on the sea that haven't been offloaded, so the cash flow is going to continue to come in. They got cash flow going in through Pakistan. This blockade is a joke, an absolute joke. What's not a joke is Iran shutting down the Strait of Hormuz and Yemen shutting down the Bab el-Mandeb Straits. So this is devastating for the economies of the Persian Gulf and eventually for the economies of the world. So what you're going to have Ukraine attack an Iranian ship in the Caspian Sea as a way of solving the inequities of the U.S. fleet's inability to blockade the Iranian ports. All it does is guarantee that Ukraine dies even more. Look, everything that's happening in Ukraine right now is because Ukraine overstepped, and striking an Iranian ship in the Caspian Sea is overstepping. Russia has so much more capacity to expand this conflict against Ukraine, and so I just think that if that's the thinking, it's going to be rapidly proven wrong, and Ukraine's going to pay an even heavier price.
Is it just a coincidence, Scott, that Trump met with Zelensky and Netanyahu on the same day? I know it's hard to judge and understand Trump's behavior, but maybe from a larger perspective, why would the United States do this? Why, at this point, at this juncture, in these particular wars, would it make sense to meet with these two leaders? Netanyahu is saying that he gave Trump more intelligence on Iran. And as we all know, Netanyahu usually likes to use this time with Trump, which he gets a lot of, to push for more escalation. Your thoughts?
Well, I think both leaders are in Washington, D.C. Because Lindsey Graham died, and they're there to attend the funeral services. And so these were meetings that, were meetings of convenience. Politically speaking, at a time, after the NATO summit where Trump promised, Patriot missile licensing and all this stuff's going on. There's turmoil in Ukraine. If Zelensky showed up for Graham's funeral services and didn't have any interaction with the White House, people would go, what's going on there? Why not? Why aren't they talking? We don't get it. So there had to be a White House meeting. It was a photo op. It wasn't anything substantive. You have Trump smiling next to Zelensky, which is a huge victory for Zelensky, as opposed to the last time they met. And Zelensky's issued a statement which says nothing, basically because nothing happened. It was politically, the same thing with, Netanyahu's coming to pay respects to Lindsey Graham, a close ally of Israel. And so you can't have the Israeli prime minister land and not meet with Donald Trump. So there's a meeting. What's the purpose of the meeting? To provide intelligence updates. But the notion that Trump is ill-informed about what's going on with Israel and Netanyahu's ill-informed about going to the United States is absurd. This was just simply more of a PR stunt. You can't have the prime minister land and not meet with Donald Trump. So the White House had to meet this guy, had to take photographs. There had to be a reason behind this. But, the coincidence is Lindsey Graham's dead body.
Well, speaking of Lindsey Graham, maybe a good way to commemorate him is to see how wrong he was about Iran and how disastrous his pushing the U.S. into war with Iran actually was. Here is a clip that's been circulating about his predictions for what's going to happen to Iran out of the war.
Able to deliver. Oh, to be honest with you, I think about 3 to 4 weeks, we should have them in a spot where they start losing control of some cities. And what we're trying to do is just get a few cities to fall in the next month. Get the Arabs more openly involved tomorrow or by the end of the week, and just have almost irreversible momentum.
So there was what Lindsey Graham thought was going to happen in the Iran war. Cities would begin to fall very rapidly after U.S. strikes, and then the Arab countries would take over. Your reactions to this, Scott, now that Lindsey Graham has deceased?
Well, apparently Lindsey Graham was preparing some sort of documentary film that was going to revive his floundering senatorial ambitions. He was, facing re-election, and it was being challenged, and there was a chance that he might not win. He was panic, fundraising. So there's this documentary that was being prepared. The thing about a documentary, understand that this is not unscripted. This isn't The Office, where people run and just say. Every time Lindsey Graham did this, it was designed to make him look important, and he is saying things that he has thought about in advance. And so these are, pronouncements of a man that isn't. It's not the musings of it. So, and the reason why I bring this up is, look, anytime you have spontaneous discussions, I mean, you and I could go to a bar and sit there and start talking about, this, hell, we're doing it right now. This is totally unscripted. So you ask me a question and I'm answering the question off the top of my head. I didn't come in with a prepared statement saying, okay, here's my answer. I'm thinking as we go on. You're throwing new information at me. I'm absorbing the information. I'm trying to make it make sense, and we're having a spontaneous conversation. And when these happen, anybody who gets it 100% right is not human. You're sitting there saying you may not have all the data, you may have forgotten some data, and you say things. So if this was truly spontaneous for Lindsey Graham, I'd say, well, let's cut him a little bit of slack because, he's just, no, these are scripted events, which makes how wrong he is even worse because he's now saying things that are deliberately being said for posterity, it's scripted so that he looks like he is God's gift to American leadership and that he is the man behind this. He's the thinker. He's the brilliant brain. And it just shows how wrong Lindsey Graham was, how utterly wrong he was.
Exactly. Yes. And we can be thankful for that, honestly, because Lindsey Graham's ambitions being achieved is a disaster for the world and humanity.
And America.
And the United, exactly. The U.S. Definitely included in that global calculation. But for the United States, 100%. And it has been. I mean, just the United States. I mean, the United States losing this war has also been a disaster for the United States, just for being involved. Scott, I wanted your reaction to this development. It seems like CENTCOM, the Pentagon, can't seem to stop messing with Iran war casualty numbers. So according to Main Press News, Pentagon statistics were found to have been altered, 270 U.S. soldier injuries and 4 deaths having been wiped from the record instead of being placed on a separate list. The excuse provided for this was that they weren't classifying these casualties as part of the Iran war toll because it is during a ceasefire, according to them. And earlier this year, The Intercept revealed U.S. had removed at least 15 casualties from the Iran war count. Scott, what's going on, and how do you see this? What's your reaction to it?
This is the cheapest form of politics. The men and women who put on the uniform of the United States, and I know there's many people out there saying, screw them, they shouldn't have joined, whatever. Hey, stick it in your ear. For whatever reason they joined. They took an oath, and they assumed certain responsibilities and obligations. And one of the obligations is to go where you're told to go and do what you're told to do, so long as it's not, in your face war crime. These people were manning, I believe, a Patriot air defense system. And they were struck by Iranian weapons that were used in attacks against facilities that this air defense system was supposed to be, defending against. This is literally the definition of war. It was a combat operation. But because of politics, remember, Trump, under the War Powers Act, had to make certain declarations to Congress. And, after the period of time covered by the initial declaration passed, he would have to make more recommendations and come to Congress for approval. And Congress wasn't inclined to approve the extension of authorities. And so what Donald Trump did is basically said, it's over. It's over. Finished. Clock reset. And then he's saying we never reset the clock. We never punched it again. So these deaths are independent of that initial 39-day conflict and a little beyond that. This is something totally different, and we're separating, as if the American public doesn't know. I mean, this is the stupidity of this act. The fact that we're talking about this right now only brings, greater scrutiny into the deaths of these soldiers, why they died, why are there 270 wounded? How did that happen? Let's get some more details on that. But the Pentagon is deliberately, disguising, the number of wounded and where they were wounded, how they were wounded, because they don't have a legal obligation to report. Dead, you have a legal obligation to report. Wounded, not so much. But this just proves that this war, I mean, let's just think about it. Just frame it this way. I mean, today I'm wearing my Marine Corps T-shirt because why the hell not? I'm proud of who I am. I'm proud of what I've done. I'm proud of my service. And when I reached up into my closet, I grabbed this shirt, and it just so happened to have my little Marine Corps emblem on it. But the point is, when I put that uniform on, I was honoring my country. I was saying, I'm here for you. When you need me, I'm here. This administration is disgracing everybody who wears the uniform by doing this. These people died in the service of their country. We don't have to agree on it. You and I both agree this war should never be fought. We both agree they shouldn't be there. But they're dead because they volunteered and they were sent and they were put in harm's way and they died. And we should be a lot more respectful of this sacrifice that they made. Again, people say, sacrifice what? Guys, you're missing the point. The point is when we say, as Pete Hegseth says, as Donald Trump says, that I'm here for the troops. I'm here for the troops. I support the troops. The troops are everything. The men and women who wear the uniform are everything. Well, they're everything until they're dead and wounded. Then they become inconvenient. And look at these wounded. Have we talked about the wounds that they've suffered? Because the dead are dead. They're gone. Their remains are going to be buried. Their families are going to suffer, but it's over at that point in time. Checks will be written, and that's that. What about the wounded? Because we're talking about some severe brain injuries. We're talking about the potential of amputations. We're talking about spinal injuries. We're talking about things that are, I can guarantee some of them are going to be pooping in a colostomy bag for the rest of their life. And these are like 20-year-old kids that are condemned to that. So right. What are we doing about them? They're going to go to a VA hospital some point and spend the rest of their life there. Some are going to have brain injuries and they'll be drooling in a cup. They may have engaged a pretty little 18-year-old girl before they went off to war. Maybe they even married her and maybe even got her pregnant. So she's back home with a baby. And now they come back drooling in a cup. That relationship's over. That girl ain't going to hang around. She's going to leave them. The parents are going to grow old and die. And so at some point in time, this is going to be a 40-year-old drooler in a cup. And what's the country doing for them? Not a damn thing. Why? Because look at how we treat our warriors. Look at how we treat them. The disgraceful way we treat them. And where is society lining up condemning the actions of this president? And this should be everybody. I know, look, I'm against the war. You know this, Danny. You know that I've been articulated against this war from day one. I'm not out here shouting pro-war, pro-war, pro-war. I'm just saying what a nation of hypocrites we have become, where we encourage people to sign up and put on uniform. Hegseth's running around. Enlist now. It's never been a better time to join the military. Donald Trump is the best commander-in-chief we ever had up at Department of War. More lethality, more lethality. We're going to inject you with testosterone, make you an even better man. You can bench press 315 pounds like me. Go, go, go. What? You got killed? Screw you. Wait a minute. You got wounded? Sorry. We don't want to talk about you because that's not good recruiting. It's high time, and this should be this, and I'll say this right now. People have always asked me, and I get this question all the time because I'm very proud. Like I said, proud of it. Would I encourage people to join the Marine Corps today? And I have said consistently that you have to reflect on things. You have to think about the future. You have to understand you're not always going to work with a commander-in-chief who you politically support. Let me change my answer right now. No. Nobody should join the U.S. military today. Nobody. Because we're no longer a country worthy of defending, and we're not a country that honors your sacrifice. If you're wearing the uniform today, wait for your enlistment to end and get the hell out. If you have your commission, when your commission obligation finishes, leave. And one of the reasons I'm saying this is what the legislation is being considered right now in the Congress that basically merges the United States military with the Israeli military, United States intelligence with it. We have become greater Israel. And I will never, ever, ever support an American wearing the uniform of anything that's other than 100% defense of the United States of America. America no longer functions as a constitutional republic, which means that the Constitution you take an oath to uphold and defend is meaningless because it doesn't have any value. So I would never encourage anybody to join the United States military today as it's currently constructed. And I wouldn't until which time we change the nature of our government, the attitude of our government, till the Constitution is a document protected by the American people. You can't take an oath, because remember, when you join the military, you take an oath to the Constitution. When the Constitution has no meaning, that means your oath has no meaning. And now we're seeing that played out right now with the disgraceful conduct towards these 4 dead Americans and the 270 wounded soldiers. That's it. And you're talking to a guy who volunteered to serve in the military and is very proud of his military service. But the country that I served isn't the country today. The country I served would never allow itself to be morphed into an amalgam of United States and Israel, which is exactly what's happening today. And remember, they're dying today there because of Israel, because of the intelligence provided by Benjamin Netanyahu, because this administration has totally subordinated itself to the will of Israel. We are literally becoming Greater Israel. Greater Israel, the Greater Israeli experiment was failing in the Middle East. So now the Israelis have successfully attached themselves to the American host and redefining America as an extension of Israel. And mark my words, this is going to have ramifications for free speech. There will come a time when we can't have this conversation, Danny, because it'll be illegal, because that's what happens when Israel takes over America. And that's the direction we're heading right now. The absolute occupation of the United States of America from a legal standpoint by Israel, by Greater Israel, by the Zionists.